Hey, what's going on everybody, and welcome back to the Whiskey Cove. And on today's episode, we look at 10 whiskies that I feel are just not worth their MSRP. Run the video. Alright then folks, thank you for joining us for another new episode of the Whiskey Cove, where today we look at 10 whiskies that in my personal belief are probably just not worth the money. Some are expensive, some are cheap, but I feel like they just fall a little short for the whiskey that is in the bottle compared to the price tag. If you haven't already, definitely go over and visit the whiskeycove.square.site where you can pick up one of these fantastic premium glassware. This is the Space Eye Taster with the Whiskey Cove engraved on the front. We also have a rocks glass, a Glencairn and a Kenzie. As close to MSRP as we can get, delivered directly to your door. We're all about spreading the Whiskey Cove love, and if you can have a Whiskey Cove glass in your house, that would make me feel very happy. So definitely go and check that out after today's video. With that being said, we have 10 bottles to go through. So let's dive head first into bottle number 1. Of course, Caribou Crossing. Everything about this bottle screams premium. It has this awesome caribou topper, which is really heavy. Feels really, like you're paying a lot of money for this. MSRP on this is around 60, 65 US dollars. I went to Canada and I saw a bunch of these, but they were all asking for like $100 Canadian. At the time was like $80, $90. It didn't really make sense to me saying this is a Canada product or Canadian product. Maybe that had a lot more to do with the tax there. ABV on this is 40% ABV or 80 proof. It just tastes like a $10 whiskey, like a $10 bottom cider, like a Canadian velvet, something like that. It's so thin, so grain forward, it's so youthful as well, that grainy youthful note just comes through in abundance. This, like I said, this is like a $10 whiskey is what it tastes like. Yes, this is a single barrel. I've had one or two of these. I've tried another one, and I feel like they all fall a little bit short. So if we're talking about whiskeys that are just not worth their MSRP, this is definitely right up the top of the list. Because, like I said, bottle looks beautiful, top is fantastic. The whiskey's just not good at all. $10 whiskey at most, not worth it. Bottle number 1. Sliding into bottle number 2, that is going to be Smoke Wagon Private Barrel, and this is going to be the straight rye whiskey. This is a 6-year-old, 51% rye, 45% corn, 4% malted barley. This isn't necessarily bad whiskey. I drank this, I quite enjoyed it. I thought this was a pretty damn good pick. However, is it a $100 bottle for 6-year MGP whiskey? I don't think that it is. I think that you can pick up this style of rye for about $50, $60. The different distilleries will source it. Like you can get the Bullet 12-year for like $50. Some Templeton stuff as well. Anything that's sourced from MGP that has a similar mash bill generally sits a lot lower. Think of stuff, maybe some like the Sagamore stuff that they source from MGP. That is really good stuff. But you don't see a $100 bottle of whiskey. Yes, Smoke Wagon have built up their brand, and these private barrels have notoriously been pretty hard to get. However, of new or of late here in Colorado, they've just been springing up at every big liquor store, and they've been having a hard time at moving them. Because at the end of the day, like I said, it still is a 6-year MGP whiskey. It's a good whiskey, it's a good bottle, it just isn't worth $100. And that's before tax, you're looking closer to $110. Really good pick, 57% ABV, but just 6 years. Left a little bit, not necessarily a sour note in my mouth. I thought that I had a good bottle when I picked this up. But then when I started seeing them pop up everywhere, and the distilleries, liquor stores weren't able to sell them, then I was like, it is just 6-year MGP at the end of the day for $100. So if this is the first time you've seen this bottle, maybe it's worth just buying it for that. But if my humble opinion is, it's just not worth $100. It still is good whiskey though. Bottle number 3, and we are going to the Buffalo Trace Distillery, and that is because we have, well, a single barrel. The rarest in the regular Weller series, if you like, without Weller. The Weller Wheat, new Weller Wheat one that they came out with, and then the Weller Millennium, the Emma Wheat and the Millennium one, those two new ones. So out of the regular lineup, this is probably the hardest one to find. I paid a shameful like $300 for this. I think this is when this bottle was like, people were saying that it was worth like $1,000. I think that this has come down in price in the black markets to like $400-500, and it'll probably continue to tumble more, because even though it's 48.5% ABV, it didn't really taste much different to a Weller Special Reserve. Weller Special Reserve is 3.5% ABV lower, and it's not a bad bourbon, a wheated bourbon in its own right. However, it is a $30 bottle of whiskey. Yes, this bottle of whiskey is $60, $70, $80. I think you normally still see these for like $99, but it isn't worth that. If you were paying like $40 for this bottle, then I would say it was worth it. Yes, this is a super rare bottle. I know a lot of folks will just be like, you know, if you find them for $40, send $50, send them my way. However, if we're talking just about the whiskey in the glass stacked up against its sale price of like $50, $60, $70, $80 plus, it just isn't worth it. This is Buffalo Trace's wheated mash bill. You're better off getting a Weller Special Reserve single barrel pick if you can find one of those instead, is my opinion. Moving on, we're going to go to Old Forester, and that is because Old Forester had a new release lately, and this is a specific release to Texas. So those folks who are around the US who would love to get their hands on this, and that is the Old Forester King Ranch, or King's Ranch here. So this is a collaboration with King Ranch in Texas, and this is coming in at 52.5% ABV or 105 proof, and like I said, very limited to Texas. So we picked this up. I had to buy it for the Old Forester blind that we did a couple of months ago. And this did not have a very good showing at all. I was expecting it to have like maybe more wood, more mesquite, like some of that sweet Texas spice. It just fell a little bit short. It kind of crashed out in the first round of the first hurdle. Didn't make the final bracket. Like the Old Forester 1897, 1910, 1920 are all just much better. Especially 1897, that's something that you can find everywhere. The bottled in bond one, that turned out to be a very good whiskey. But however, for this, like $60, $65, it isn't worth it. Pick up the Old Forester 100 instead, or the 1897, which usually sits at around the high 40s, early 50s. The prices are changing all the time, so it's quite hard for me to keep up all the time on every specific bottle, but I believe it's high 40s, early 50s. Where this one, for all those of us who don't live in Texas and can't get this bottle, it wasn't worth the MSRP, so don't go chasing it. Obviously, whiskey is all about opinions and whatnot, so what I don't like, a lot of people might like, but if you're someone who follows the channel, kind of knows where my palate's at, and you can kind of draw similarities, you don't want to pick up that bottle for $60. It's not worth it. Moving on, and we are going to the Bernheim distillery owned by Heaven Hill, because this is the Bernheim barrel proof. This specific one is the A223. Yes, there have been other new releases, but from my understanding, they just haven't been worth the money. MSRP is $60, so cheaper than the Larceny, cheaper than the Elijah Craig counterparts. I thought it would be a good addition to kind of like Heaven Hill's barrel proof lineup, because the regular version of this, the 7-year age statement one, is very good. That being a wheat whiskey, I think it's 45% ABV, 90 proof. That is very good. For $30, that's age statement and findability, worth this money every day of the week. However, double the amount for this, and the taste is just weaker. Yeah, I would take a pass on this. Hopefully there'll be some other iterations that'll come out, like the Elijah Craig, like the Larceny's, they'll be very good. But you would expect the first edition, which this was, to be lights out, to be like full entertainment, to have that X factor, that va-va-voom, and it was just missing. I wouldn't buy this again for anything more than $40, unless, like I said, something comes out that people just are losing their minds over. That is the Bernheim barrel proof. Next up, we're going to stay with Heaven Hill. Another bottle that is specific to just one state, and you can only get this in Kentucky, and I think they might even have kind of discontinued it at this point. Distilleries have a tendency of discontinuing stuff and then bringing them back, like the Evan Williams single barrel seemed to get discontinued to Kentucky only, and now it's become available everywhere else again. So this was Heaven Hill 6, and I believe they were discontinuing this for the Heaven Hill bottle in bond. This one, before this is 7 years, but this is 6 years, and it was supposed to kind of be the same bottle, and this was supposed to be like the new branding of it. But the 7 year is much better than this 6 year. Again, I know this is only like a $25, $30 bottle of whiskey, but it does kind of drink a little light. It's very thin. you're better off getting the Evan Williams bottled in bond all day long. I wouldn't buy this for $20. It's just not worth it. Get maybe even Old Grandad bottled in bond. I think that would be a better bottle. So for $30, I think this is a pass. Again, for those of us who are not living in Kentucky, who can't get this bottle, again, you know, you're not really missing anything. That was Heaven Hill Old Style Bourbon, the 6th year. Moving on, and that is 1792 Full Proof. And this will probably be a controversial one, if not the most controversial one on this list. And that's because there's a lot of people out there that like this full proof. But for me, though, in 1792 full proof, but for me, it always comes across really hot. This is 62.5% ABV, so it is getting up there in ABV, but I think you can handle the ABV quite well. Usually with a lot of higher cask strength products, you get a really nice bit of sweetness that kind of comes through, maybe some more of that oak as well, that kind of settles down some of that higher ABV. It just kind of steps back and tells her, you know, chill out, man. You know, enjoy some of this sweetness. However, with this, it kind of just drinks like pure gasoline in a little way. And I love 1792. I love a lot of what Barton does, a lot of what people get sourced from Barton as well. But for whatever reason, this full proof just hits a little different. My palate, what I tend to favor is kind of like the 50 to 60% ABV range. I do love Stag Junior, for example, and a lot of like higher light whiskey and MGP cask strength stuff. But this one, for whatever, it just kind of just missed the mark. So for like $50 to $60, I don't think it's worth it. I think Benchmark Full Proof would probably be a better offer. And also like Wild Turkey Rare Breed, you're probably better off going in that direction as well. So that's 1792 Full Proof. There's 3 bottles left. That is going to be, next up is going to be Elijah Craig Toasted. This has become a lot more findable here in Colorado. Go back 18 months, you couldn't find this anywhere in Colorado. Highly allocated bottle of whiskey, and it was marked up to like $80, $90. And then when I was able to get my hands on it again, I tasted it, I was like, this stuff just isn't as good as that price point. MSRP on this is actually like $60, $65, maybe $70 now, and it just isn't worth that money. I think you're better off getting a Woodford Double Oaked for like about $10, $15 less, or even better, an Old Forester 1910. Go and chase that stuff. I think even, what is this, 94 proof of 47% ABV. It's good. It's kind of good for maybe like a $40 bottle of whiskey. I think that it's just priced up a little bit too much. There are much better alternatives for that. That is the Elijah Craig Toasted. And then the penultimate bottle, and this shouldn't be a surprise, and this is Elmer T. Lee. MSRP on this is bumped up in the last few years and kind of sits at around $59.99. It isn't worth the chase. It isn't worth the MSRP. You're better off finding like a Buffalo Trace single barrel. And I've done blinds with these bottles, and Buffalo Trace single barrels are generally better than this. This has got gradually better through the year or so that this bottle has been opened, but it just tastes very flat, very weak, very thin for what you expect it to be. I haven't tried Rock Hill Farms. I hear that's the better alternative to this. I think President's, Hancock's President's is better. Blanton's is better than this as well. But for $50, $60, $70, it is just not worth the value for money. Get a Buffalo Trace single barrel pick if you can find them. And then lastly, another bottle that you shouldn't be surprised that makes this list, that is Booker's Bourbon. The MSRP on this guy is now $100, and you'll see it marked up much more than $100 just about everywhere. At the end of the day, this is a 6 to 7 year barrel strength whiskey. And for $100, again, it's kind of like the Smoke Wagon. You get like a 6 to 7 year MGP rye, where this is Jim Beam. Yes, it's cool. Yes, they have a story for each one as well. So it might just be worth getting one just so you can have it and like share that story with other people. But overall, if you're someone who chases this, and I'm not going to tell you how you should spend your money, but for me personally, I think it's well overpriced. You're better off, if you like the palate of Jim Beam, you're better off going with a Knob Creek 120 proof single barrel pick and just pick a couple of different single barrel picks up. Yes, it doesn't come with the story, but it's going to cost you like $50, $60. Heck, we saw a bottle down in New Mexico. Yes, it was at a Costco, but it was $40. That's a slither of what you'd be paying for this. The last bottle of Booker's that I actually bought was in 2022, I believe. 2021-02, that's so in 2021, and I think I paid $80 for it, and I was like, I'm not ever gonna pay more than $80 for this. But I've mentioned on the show a few times that if there's a one that comes out, and again, much like some of the other whiskey we talked about today, that is just phenomenal, then I'll probably pay up to 100 because I understand inflation's kind of kicked up a little bit more. So that was the last bottle, and that was Booker's. Hope you enjoyed today's video. A couple of controversial bottles, I think, on this list, but also a lot is probably understandable as well. If you like the content, don't forget to go over to Patreon, check us out over there, join the Patreon for as little as $3 a month, where you have full access to all the videos that I upload straight away, so you don't have to wait for them on YouTube. And also as well, you can join the Messenger there as well to engage in the community with me as well, post pictures, kind of ask questions, suggest whiskeys to review. And then if you go up through the other tiers, you get some free samples as well, some free swag like the Glencairns, and then also entered into a yearly bottle draw, which is coming up in July, which will be quite exciting there. So as we say on this channel, thank you for watching as we drink through the world's whiskeys, one glass at a time. Cheers.